So I was having problems with stick drift on two PS5 controllers, and I decided to swap the joysticks for Hall effect sensor joysticks. And after two attempts, one very unsuccessful because somehow I managed to kill the controller, and a successful one, I want to share with YouTube what I have learned. But before we start, I just want to say, I don't know if this protects me in any way, but I'm not legally responsible for any damages that may incur if you attempt to fix your ROM controller. And if you're okay with that, then stick around. The tools you're going to need for this job are some sort of prying tool, a screwdriver, obviously, some cable cutters, a soldering iron, solder sucker, which is this one here. As soon as I find it, I'll show it to you. A solder wick would be nice, but it's not required in the slightest. But I don't know, if you want to clean up the pads and make them look nice and tidy, then you can use one. Flux, normal solder with the flux core, you know, the wire. And also a solder that has a very low melting temperature. I've got this, which is a solder paste in the syringe form, and I do recommend it because it makes it easy to apply. I think, just as a general rule of thumb, if you want to desolder anything from anywhere, it's good to have something like this around. So with soldering, I don't think it's like a tool that you just have lying around. If you're into electronics, then you will have to buy stuff at some point. So you just get them on Amazon. You just have to wait an extra day to get your controller done. It's not a big deal. Also, something to hold the board in place would be nice. I don't have anything good, so I got creative. You'll see later on in the video. So first, you want to pry the front panel off because under it there's two screws that need to be unscrewed. After that, you want to pop the L1 and R1 buttons off, and only these ones. Don't try to pry off the triggers because you'll ruin the whole assembly. Under these buttons, you have two screws again that need to be unscrewed. After you popped everything off, undo the screws and put them in a safe place. Then pry the two halves apart. And be careful because there's two tabs where the joysticks are that need to be undone as well. It took me a while to make them come apart, and I think you just have to increase the force little by little so you don't rip anything. After you manage to take the two halves apart, you'll see the battery and a bunch of ribbon cables. What you want to do here first is unplug the battery. After that, you should have access to the screw on the battery tray. Now, one of the microphones is using the tray as a housing, and I would recommend disconnecting the ribbon cable and then taking the tray off so they remain together. After you've taken the tray and the microphone off, you can start disconnecting the rest of the ribbon cables. After the ribbon cables are out, turn on your soldering iron because we gotta desolder these rumble motor cables. On the iFixit guide, the person clears the pads and takes the solder off. I don't see the point of doing that, so what I did was just to heat up the solder and then remove the wires off the pad. Once you remove the cables, you can push on the joysticks a little bit and it should pop the board right out. This is where the fun part begins. The person that made the video for iFixit has removed the joysticks and kept them, but I don't see what the point of that is because they're broken. So what I did was I took the cable cutters and just chopped them little by little. That way you make your life easier because you don't have to heat up the pads at the same time to remove them. And to do that, you just have to go around the metal housing and snip all the tabs that are connecting it together, making sure that you don't scratch the PCB in any way because that's what I did on the first joystick and it just doesn't turn on at all anymore. When you start snapping the metal housing on the joystick, you should be able to just start taking pieces out and eventually the potentiometers will start loosening up and you can just wiggle them to break them away. You should be left with the plastic at the bottom and the button. What we want to do with the button is to just keep cutting it till you only get the little leg pins, whatever you want to call them, at which point the plastic will just come off the board. And then if you want, you can trim the pins a bit further, and that makes it even easier to remove, to the point where you just have to heat up the solder, and you can use the solder sucker and it should pull out the leftover pins from the holes. And that should be it pretty much. So now with only the pins, what you want to do is add a dab of low temperature melting solder, because that will make your life way easier. And then take your soldering iron and start heating it up so they combine nicely. And when that's done, you just want to prop up the board somehow on something, and one by one heat up a pin, then use the solder sucker to suck them out of the hole, and that should work wonders. Once you're done removing all the pins, you can use the solder wick, if you have it, to clean up the holes if you really need to. You should be able to do this just with a solder sucker. I've done it before, but yeah, you can do that if you want to. When the holes are clean, you're ready to pop your Hall Effect joysticks in. Then once they're in the holes, you can apply a bit of flux on the pins and then add some solder. And once they're soldered, you can follow these steps backwards and assemble it. And that's it. You've got a working controller. After everything is assembled and you still have a working controller, hopefully, you need to head to DualShock Calibration GUI. This is a tool that allows you to calibrate your new joysticks. Unfortunately, Sony hasn't released anything for that, so this is a third-party tool, but it works great, so yeah. It only works on Google Chrome, so don't try any other browsers. And the way you connect to it is through your normal USB. Connect the controller to your computer, and then once you're on the website, you can click on connect, and usually it will pop up a device list, but I connected to this before, so it didn't show it to me. And yeah, once you're here, you can click on Calibrate Stick Center, and you just go through the steps and you should be done. So yeah, this should cover about everything. If this video was helpful to you, please give it a thumbs up, and if you know anyone that's got this problem and they try to fix it, maybe share this video with them, and yeah, I'll see you next time. Bye.